Hey, fire starters. Before we start the show, I wanted you to know that occasionally I will dedicate an episode to what's happening on the national stage in education. Not only do we get together, and you know this about teacher life, not only do we get together to talk about what is and is not working in our classrooms and to share ideas, but we also get together just to talk about what's happening in one place that affects the collective. And there have been a few events recently that I really want to talk to you guys about because isn't that what teachers do? Like, did you hear about this? What are y'all doing about that where you are? And I'd love to hear what's happening in your town. So make sure that you reach out to me online to share your personal experiences with the topic. Let's start the show. Hey, change makers, and welcome to The Core, sponsored by Red Apple Edco. This is your everything education podcast. We talk about current events, books to read. We interview education leaders, hear their stories, learn from their biggest lessons, and they share what they wish you knew about what it means to be in education today. I'm your host, Dr. Kia Turner. Buckle up for small seeds of inspiration that can lead to big changes in your classroom practice. Let's take a bite out of today's guest. Today, I wanted to actually talk to you about a story ripped from the Newsweek headlines. Have you guys seen the story of this PE teacher in Oregon who disarmed a potential school shooter? The guy's name is Keanon Lowe. He's in Oregon, and he was in the classroom getting a student, looking for a kid randomly, and in walks this 18-year-old student with a gun. He comes in the door and is ready to kill himself and possibly others with this weapon that he's managed to bring onto the school campus. Keanon Lowe sees what's about to happen, and he says he acts on instinct, goes up to the kid, grabs the gun, and then does the opposite of what we think, because in all of that Rambo teacher training that we sometimes get, you think we're going to throw staplers and basketballs at this school shooter and we're going to all jump them, okay? Like it's back in 95 and they robbing us for bubble coats and Jordans at the bus stop. Some of y'all don't understand that, but some of you do. In fact, what he says is he takes the gun and then he hugs the kid. Like, he said he hugged the boy and he just talked to him and let him know that he was there for him. And this interaction caused the boy to release the gun. Another teacher was able to come take the gun completely. He's sobbing in Keanon Lowe's arms. And then the police come and take the kid away. The kid ends up getting like some probation and some mental health supports, which is really what he needs, right? What's important to me about this story in general is that to me, it exemplifies the impact of the work that we do in classrooms and in schools that we might not necessarily see. This was a kid that wasn't even in his class. Keanon wasn't even supposed to be there. And he happened to be, look, divinely, because I don't believe anything happens by happenstance. So if you ask me, honey, it was the Lord that put him in the right room at the right time to talk to this child. And he was just obedient and he did that. But he literally led with vulnerability and empathy and managed to prevent what could have been yet another mass tragedy at a school. And so when I think about the work that we do in schools, this is the reason that I say you need to be called to teaching, right? Like, if you are in teaching and you are in this profession because it is like some type of stopgap or you feel like it's a quick way to make money, it's not. But, well, there's ways, but definitely the straightforward route is not the way. It has to be something that you feel led to do. And for many people that are led to education, it's based on their own personal experience. I know for me that my school experience was West Hell, depending on what we're talking about, which part of it we're talking about. It was West Hell. I did not have a smooth, uninterrupted school experience. I did not have one of those, Disney Channel movie school experiences where like everybody sits with you in the cafeteria and you go out for various teams and y'all are all friends who hang out and go to sleepovers together. That was not my life, right? And what I found intriguing when I became an adult, because I didn't think I was going to become a teacher. I was all set to become an attorney or a therapist, okay, for a variety of reasons that we can get into when we meet in person and sit down and have a conversation. When I became a teacher and found myself drawn to being there for children and going into the classroom, it was funny to me because that classroom was the source of some of my most painful moments. Does that make sense? Like, I had had some of my greatest damage done at school, sometimes by teachers and other times by students. And so me, the same person who, upon receiving her high school diploma, honey, just ornery, took the diploma, praised the Lord, walked off the stage and did not go take my seat, walked up the aisle and out the door. Just completely disrespectful. That's exactly what I did, though. And thought I would never be back at school. It was a surprise to me when God orchestrated my life in such a way that I became a teacher because I did not see it coming. In fact, I took the teacher certification test, the C-base, on a whim. I literally hung out the night before and was like, all right, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, I like working with kids and everything. If this is what you want me to do, I'm going to pass this test. Honey, walked in and passed it, hadn't ever seen it before in my life. Got accepted to my education program, had never thought about it before in my life. It all just came together for me because I was walking, I didn't realize it then, but walking into my greater purpose. And so are you. If you're in the classroom and you're thinking, man, my school experience was rough, and you're there because another kid is having that same experience and they need a teacher like you. Or they're having a tangential experience and they need a teacher like you. All of those things that I felt like kind of rocked my world as a student were the things that I tried to work actively to prevent as a teacher. Isn't that funny? So in my classroom, I tried to make sure that every child felt heard and poured into and seen and recognized, and that I wasn't browbeating children and putting them down, that I wasn't shutting out their families, because I think I've told you here on this podcast, and if not, I wrote about it, how my own mother felt blocked out of my school experience and unsure of her contribution, even though I was doing well. Does that make sense? And so I worked actively to make my classroom safe because I'd had such an unsafe school experience. And that may be what you're doing too. And that's beautiful. Like, that's you walking in your purpose. So maybe everything is not perfect, honey, because it's real, not perfect. And so maybe in your classroom, you still need to tighten up your planning, or you still need to tighten up organization, or you still need to tighten up management, but your heart is there, then you got the battle 75% won, my friend. You're there for the right reason, which means that inevitably you're putting things in place to make school a safe place. And that's what you need. And that's what I think of when I think of people like this particular athletics coach. Here's a person who's looking to make school safe. He saw a kid with a gun, and instead of being like, oh, it's time, I'm about to whoop a kid down today, he led with love. He hugged this child that the media told us we should fear, hugged him, shared his own story with him, and said in the article, I've been through some dark places in my life. I could understand what he was going through. I know what it's like to be in a dark place. You better shut your mouth, honey. That's the Lord. Who goes up to a child with a gun and says, I understand what it's like to be at such a place where you're like, this is the only option that I have. That's a person walking in their calling, right? So number one, because you know I always got my 3 points. I can't help it. I like the number 3. Number one, you need to know that the work that we do is a calling, and that typically it's born out of the fire of our personal experience. It is okay if your school experience was not perfect. And in fact, that is probably helping you to do amazing work in the classroom. I didn't say perfect work, because all of us have room for improvement, honey. Me, your administrator, the teacher with the Pinterest perfect room. Everybody has room for improvement. Honey, I was in a room the other day, couldn't even breathe. There was so much stuff in there. Sorry, I digress. But we all have room for improvement. The point is that we're in the classroom because we desire to make a difference. And that desire is typically born out of us feeling like somebody needed to make a difference for us and didn't. You know how there's that popular picture that's like, be who you needed when you were younger? That's exactly what you should be doing. If you're in the classroom gutting it out like that because you're like, I'm not going to give up on these kids because one teacher didn't give up on me, or because I had this opportunity that just changed the trajectory of my life and I want to give that to other kids, join the club. You are right where you need to be. And you are set to make a difference even if you're not seeing it right then. You know what I mean? I think about this football coach and I'm like, he probably didn't realize the impact he was having on kids, the impact of his story on kids until it was time for him to share it. You know what I mean? You share it and you done disarmed a whole school shooter at this point. Dang. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know the power and purpose that you carry around. So don't take the work that you do lightly because it is significant. And then number two, you need to lead with empathy every day in your classroom, right? And some days that's hard. Listen, I had my students that last year I was in the classroom, they already knew you need to talk to me after my second cup of coffee. And yes, I had my own personal pot and coffee in the classroom and refrigerator and creamer. And it's so funny because that last year I had seniors and they used to get to the classroom early and make my coffee for me because, honey, I was not alive till cup of coffee number two. Like I could get through one if it was a good cup, you know, the kind you can stick a spoon in, you know, then I might be good then. But yeah. And some days it's hard to lead with empathy because we're juggling our own lives. But where possible, in your conversations with students and families, lead with empathy. You do not know what a child is dealing with outside of the classroom. Don't get your savior complex on. Hello, all of us. Don't feel like you're the only one between this child and the street, honey. That may not be true, but you can be a safe place for that child. You can be an additional safe place for that child, if nothing more. And you can do that by leading with empathy with them and in your interactions with their families. Because so often we make assumptions that just are not true. We just assume that because we see a kid, we know everything about them and we do not know. So when you find out some stuff that you like, what in the whole hell is going on? You empathize with that family instead of judging them. You empathize with that child instead of judging them. You know what I mean? I'll never forget, I had a student who was dating a guy that was a criminal. He had a clear criminal history. He was in jail. He was older than her too. So I think 20 something to her 18. He was in jail at the time that she was in my class, had broken into her home where she lived and had threatened her that if she ever left him, something bad would happen. And she was thinking about dropping out of school and moving in with him. Okay. So number one, this conversation came completely out of left field because she was one of my brightest students. Beautiful girl. One of my brightest students, right? Had a well-involved parent. I did not think that was coming. But when she told me, I talked to her about the power of choice, right? So instead of saying, girl, you don't need to do X or Y, I talked to her about the impact of choices because I'm not going to judge her deciding that this is the guy for her. I don't know her life. I only know the part of her I've seen at school and her parent that I've seen in passing. That's not the same as living with her day to day. I don't know what made this kind of a person seem attractive, and it's not my job to know. What I can do is be a safe place by making the conversation about the power of choice and not necessarily about right or wrong. And about how at any given point, the choices we make put us on the path we want or they don't. So it turned out to be a couple of rich discussions that happened with her. And ultimately, she decided not to move in with him. But the truth of the matter is, I went into our conversation thinking, let me put myself in her position. I remember being a young girl thinking it was love, honey. Haven't we all? Thinking it was love when it wasn't. And being willing to put everything on the line for that person. And so I'm not going to judge that. I'm going to do the best I can to show you that I understand and to give you what I can give you within the confines of my profession, right? And to leave it at that. And that's exactly what happened. When you have the opportunity to have a moment with the student to share a bit of your story or to hear more of theirs, you make sure that you lead with empathy. When a parent is breaking down and talking to you on the phone about some stuff, like we got put out today. Ooh, I had that parent conversation. We got put out today and we don't have anywhere to go. I don't know what to do with these kids. It's more of them than it is of me, and I don't have the money to take care of them. I don't know what to do with this child. I tried my best to raise him and his mother left us, so it's just me and him. All of those conversations, when you have that moment, you make sure that you lead with empathy because you do not know what impact you're having on that child or their family above and beyond the curriculum, which brings me to number 3. You're not going to be perfect at this, and it's okay. Like, the goal isn't to just deliver perfect lessons that can be measured to demonstrate that kids learned and to ship them out the door. The goal is the messy middle. You are literally planning and delivering engaging instruction and also building meaningful connection with your students where you can. That means pulling them for lunches. That means sending notes home that let parents know they're doing well. That means taking time to ask about their weekend and their birthday celebrations and whether or not they done broke up with their boyfriend if they got one or girlfriend. or to just sit and do the things that they're interested in. When you have those elementary school kids and hear about Minecraft and hear about CJ So Cool on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? It's like we have to take time to get out of ourselves and understand that what we'll end up with is the messy middle. You will do teaching and you will also do a part of their lives with them. And that's the sweet spot, right? You're delivering instruction, but they're also doing part of their lives with you. And that is a powerful place to be. So to recap, the reasons why we need to take the work we do in classrooms seriously and understand that we have a greater impact than we realize. Okay. Number one, the work we're doing is a calling, right? If you are great at teaching, it's because you're called to it. And that typically is connected to something in your background. And it may be that you're being who you needed when you were younger, or it may be that you're being who actually helped you when you were younger. Either way, that person might have been missing or present and you want to emulate or become. The point is your background got you there. And that's how you know you're in the right place. Those of you who are like, should I even be doing this? Yes. If you fit that bill, yes. Okay, you have a hard day. You go back home. You think about it. You get up. You try again. Yes. Kids need to know you think that they're worth that. And honestly, you do think they're worth that. So keep going. And then number two, you need to lead with empathy. Whenever kids give you an opportunity to know more of their story, or families give you an opportunity to know more of their story. I had a kid tell me that, look, he was legal, but his family wasn't. That was an opportunity to know more of his story. Do you see what I'm saying? Then you make sure you lead with empathy. You do not judge. You do not gossip. You do not share, because the work we do is sacred. You don't take somebody's personal, it took me a while to tell you this, and just blab it around to everyone that'll listen. That's not respectful of the space. And the goal is to create a safe classroom for children, right? As well as one where they can learn. And then finally, number three, you need to know that what you're aiming for is the messy middle. Like, this is what we're doing. The messy middle looks like planning and delivering engaging content that helps students learn, but also making time for meaningful connections, knowing that you may not see the impact of your efforts today, but that tomorrow you may, or the next day, or in a couple years. And I think I told you guys in this podcast, I ran into a kid. I had to call every single day of his senior year, every single day to come to school. And when I ran into him now, he was like, I'm so glad that you did that. I would never have made it through high school if it weren't for you. You were the only person that was like, okay, this is important. So thank you very much. Sure, honey, no problem. But that's what I'm telling you. What we are doing extends far beyond cute classrooms and lessons and gets into the stuff of doing life with our students and their families. And if that's what we're doing, we need to be willing to share ourselves. No, it's not going to be perfect. And understand that we're called to it. So we're absolutely going to be effective at it. You can DM me, honey, if you need another eye on whatever it is you got going on. I told y'all people talk to me all the time about what's happening in their classrooms. And I think social media is beautiful for that, right? Like the anonymity of it. You can reach out and DM me and I don't know who you are, honey. You send me questions about what's happening in your classroom, your frustrations at work, and we can talk through it because I've been there or I know somebody who has, honey. I was in that a long time. So follow me on Instagram at firedup_teaching. Follow me on Twitter at firedup_teacher. That's all I have for today. Fire starters, go forth, be great, and stay lit. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to The Core. Wherever you are listening to us, be sure to like our show, subscribe, and share the episode that's meant the most to you. We appreciate every single one of our subscribers, as do our sponsors. We look forward to seeing you next week. You can also check us out on YouTube at Red Apple Edco. If you'd like to see more video of these conversations, we have them posted there.